Okay, who are you and where are you from?
Sue Ellen Kroll from Providence, Rhode Island.
Nick DePace, also from Providence, Rhode Island.
Fantastic. And what do y'all do for a living?
I work in philanthropy and arts and culture.
I'm an architect and I teach architecture, landscape architecture, etc. at the Rhode Island School of Design.
Fantastic. And you told me that you have some connection with climate projects.
Yeah, so actually this winter, January, I'll be taking a group of students to Naples, Italy, to work with me on some ongoing research that I've done in the mitigation of urban heat islands using subterranean water resources. And those resources are ancient and are underground, obviously. And part of the process is to document and map these ancient subterranean water resources so they could be used to cool the city moving forward in the this new era of climate change.
Wow. Let me ask both of you, has the climate changed at all since you were younger?
Yes, 100%.
What have you seen?
Well, my birthday is in December, and when I was a kid, we used to go ice skating and sledding on my birthday, and there's now never any snow. It's the winters have been much more unpredictable and shorter. Different types of storm cycles here. We're getting different second blooms on like roses in November. So lots of different kind of everyday things that you notice.
How about yourself?
The same. That was pretty good, pretty concise. But even in my travels to Europe, particularly in Italy, where some of this work is happening, really between 2000 and today, they've had 8 to 10 summers that have been far warmer and more unbearable than there had been in the previous century. So it's pretty noticeable.
And does it, on an everyday basis, do you think about it much? Is it part of your everyday process, everyday existence?
Yeah, I think when you live in a city, you notice when it's like drought-like conditions and it's very hot and it's much hotter in the city. So you're looking for ways to escape that heat. You're concerned about energy consciousness, and like the heat is going up here 10%. So people are concerned about fossil fuels and energy consumption and usage. So yeah, it affects everything.
Yeah, I don't know how to say other than just every second of every day I'm kind of confronted with it, both in my practice as an architect, so trying to move clients in the right direction about their investments and how they can move forward in their projects that are more sustainable. Especially during COVID, a lot of these things came to the fore, even in terms of lack of material and just trying to make projects more efficient than they have been in the past. So yes, that's in that aspect is always on my mind. And then in terms of academics, I'm constantly struggling with these questions. So yeah, every minute of every day.
Well, the next question ought to be something which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about climate change?
1 being low and 10 being high.
10 being high.
Well, 10 for sure. Yeah.
Very concerned.
And then, so looking forward, are we optimistic or are we pessimistic? And is there anything we can do?
This is where we might vary. I'm very pessimistic.
Why? Why are you pessimistic?
I think I just don't see systems change happening at the multi-national level and cooperation happening that would mitigate climate change. A lot of efforts, like people can recycle, they can do those things, but it's actually deep policy change, understanding how fossil fuels and fracking and all of those things are still continuously being invested in, and we're not in the scale that other infrastructure is at, like a really demonstration project or boutique scale versus like being really ready to mobilize. And you know, I don't have renewable energy for my home yet. Can't use solar panels on it. Yeah, but so it just seems like the everyday citizen can continue to like rinse out my containers and recycle them and do those sorts of things. But the larger things happening around us that have greater impact are not being solved at our governmental levels.
Yeah, so I agree to that. In the short term, I'm very pessimistic because I'm not seeing with the hard sciences we have, I'm not seeing a kind of consciousness happening in the larger public, and obviously, it's certainly not being enacted politically to the degree it should. But in the long term, and I hope it didn't happen before we hit a really hard tipping point, we have no choice. So the optimism is that we have always, as a species, we've found innovation and modes of moving forward. I just think my pessimism is that it's going to be, it's going to be more painful than it should have to be. And unfortunately, it's going to be through, probably some events like ecological disasters and human loss that's going to push people into a new way of thinking about it. And that's the unfortunate part. But I think as a species, we're going to figure it out. It's just a matter of when.
All right. Any final thoughts either?
No, but you're here in end of November in shorts, so that shows you.
Right. And but we're very lucky to have a sort of beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
And I think as people get more comfortable with the realities in the sciences, they'll be able to appreciate some of the resources that we have every day for free. They'll start noticing sun. They'll start noticing water. They'll start noticing these elements which will not only bring us forward in the way in terms of climate sustainability, but it'll start referencing kind of the simplest things of life that we do all take for granted right now. So there we go.
Very good. On this day, the 19th of November, and in Providence, Rhode Island. Thank you very much. Okay, we ended our interview, but you at the end mentioned that you do a lot of work with building shoreline housing and development, and there was the 100-mile-an-hour wind zone, and then there was another item you were mentioning about building near coasts.
Yeah, so I've just, for better or worse, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of residential construction in either flood zones near the coast or wind zones. So I was just mentioning that in South County, Rhode Island, under Route 1 or south of Route 1, you have a 120-mile-an-hour wind zone, which usually necessitates a tremendous amount of structural engineering. And there's some prescriptive ways of doing that they offer, but it's sometimes one has to imagine that it doesn't take much more than a hurricane to devastate the entire coast. So that's one thing I'm dealing with. And the other one has to do with just flooding in general, which has really gotten worse along the barrier beaches in the last couple of decades. So flooding in general is another problem. So anyways, that's
the barrier beaches in Rhode Island.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think if you have a chance to bike along Old Route 1A, you'll notice the salt ponds, and right in front of the salt ponds, you have the barrier beaches, and then you have a series of breachways that communicate water between the salt ponds and the shore. So that kind of dynamic it really defines that lower portion of Rhode Island, and of course a certain portion of Connecticut.
Do you think of the Atlantic coast as one? Or we just had Hurricane Nicole come up here.
Yep.
And so we know that there's some connections. We can see the connections with these hurricanes. Do you think of that as a one kind of an eco
as a
system?
No, I don't think it's one complete ecosystem, because depending on where you are on the coast and also the direction of the storm event, it's going to affect the coast differently. But, it's interesting that some of the wind zones change depending on, where you are along the coast. So what I'm pretty sure of is that edge of South County deals with a greater wind load than the Cape, right? So there's already a distinction that's being made between two areas of the Atlantic coast. But what you should look at is just historically the hurricanes of 38 and 54, and how they transformed and changed the way we think about development on the shoreline. And I guess one of the questions that I have is, has our mindset changed much since then, after we've seen so much devastation and loss? Do we continue to do the same thing? And I feel like I'm culpable, because I'm as an architect, I'm really, my bread and butter is to do work down there, because there's a lot of
Prepare your houses for those events.
yeah. But the larger question is why are we still doing it? Why are we still, like, how can we continue to afford to build in areas that are under risk? And really, as a larger society, what is it getting us? There's a lot of good arguments that we should be depopulating these areas to save lives in the event that there is a storm event that could really hurt people. And also, just from a cost standpoint, whether it's, even if it's private development, ultimately, financially speaking, with insurance and so forth, we're all paying for it. So there's some bigger questions that need to be asked. And again, I think it takes a significant event and people's memory to say, well, maybe we shouldn't be developing the same way we have. Maybe the idea of how we distribute or we think about property has to change. It's just some bigger questions, I think.
All right. Well, this was well worth coming back and revisiting. Thank you so much.
Thanks.